Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. It's Wednesday, March 12th. Today is day 523. We're back from the Pilgrimage to Peace tour. I'm back in Washington, D.C. Destiny's in Boston. Chris is here in D.C. as well. We're getting ready for the Advocacy Summit next week. I'm not going to lie, we're feeling quite tired, and there's so much happening. Lent continues as we celebrated the first Sunday this past week. Today, Oxfam put out an alert summarizing what's been happening in Gaza, and they put the situation this way. As the first phase of the temporary ceasefire ended on March 1st without a new agreement in place, amidst the uncertainty, Palestinians are facing a massive crisis. Food insecurity continues to threaten the entire Gaza Strip. People have lost their homes and their livelihoods. Many urgently needed food, water, medicine, safe shelter, and proper sanitation facilities. The 59 Israeli captives remain in the custody of Palestinian armed groups. To make matters worse, Israel has fully cut off food, fuel, medicine, and other essential supplies. This has sent prices skyrocketing and has put Palestinians in Gaza at even greater risk, threatening the fragile progress aid workers have made over the last 6 weeks to attempt to stave off famine during phase 1 of the ceasefire deal that was brokered in January. I'd encourage you to go to the Oxfam website to sign their action alert as they, alongside of Churches for Middle East Peace and so many others, call for a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire. So again, that's Oxfam giving that report. An Israeli airstrike killed 4 Palestinians in Gaza yesterday. Israeli fire also killed 8 Palestinians in Gaza and 3 more in the occupied West Bank on Monday. Separately, Hamas said that there were a new round of ceasefire talks that were started yesterday. The recent talks between the U.S. and Hamas were a one-off, according to the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. He said that earlier this week, but honestly, I've heard in terms of White House circles that Secretary of State Rubio is kind of the last to know. So it's interesting that he's saying that that's a one-off. Any Israeli vessel that travels through the waters outside of Yemen is now a target, according to the Houthis. You'll recall that the Houthis are once again back on the U.S. terrorist list, according to the Trump administration. The Yemen's Houthis have cited Israel's continued blockade of aid to Gaza as the reason for why they are again going to target any Israeli vessel. In terms of negotiation, the U.S. Mideast envoy Witkoff met with Arab foreign ministers in Doha, who agreed to continue coordination with him in regard to Egypt's plan for Gaza's reconstruction. And Netanyahu held a security assessment meeting with the IDF chief of staff. It's a new chief of staff, you'll recall, also with Mossad and Shin Bet security service directors and Israeli government officials as those talks in Doha were happening. There's been quite a bit happening in the West Bank. The war on the West Bank has continued, and there have been at least one attack on an Israeli civilian. An 18-year-old was moderately wounded, an 18-year-old Israeli civilian, by gunfire in a suspected attack in a settlement. This was in Ariel, it's one of the largest settlements in the West Bank. At the time of this recording, security forces were searching for the assailant. Israel's emergency services provider, Magen David Adom, said the victim was an 18-year-old man who was evacuated to a hospital. Violence in the West Bank has escalated so significantly since October of 2023. Since that time, 910 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli soldiers or settlers. That's according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, and at least 32 Israelis, including soldiers, have been killed, according to Israeli numbers. Hamas said that the operation where the Israeli settler was injured came as a part of a response to Israel's escalation of military action in the West Bank, and they are calling for more operations against Israel. Several were injured after Israeli forces stormed Joseph's tomb. A woman was injured, a Palestinian woman was injured by a sonic grenade, and others suffered from tear gas inhalation after Israeli forces and settlers stormed the tomb, Joseph's tomb, which is east of Nablus in the occupied West Bank. The director of the Palestinian Red Crescent's Emergency and Ambulance Center in Nablus, Ahmed Ahmed, said that the ambulance crews dealt with a 45-year-old woman who was injured by a sound grenade kneed in the foot. There were 3 cases of tear gas inhalation. The correspondent for WAFA reported that a number of Israeli military vehicles backed by a bulldozer stormed the city, aided the settlers in the storming of the tomb, a monument that is supposed to hold the remains of Joseph, the viceroy of Egypt. Palestinian worker also died of injuries after taking a fall, and he was chased by Israeli forces. He succumbed to serious injuries after sustaining the fall from a construction site. This was in the occupied portion of East Jerusalem. Rafat Aziz Abdullah Ahmad was 35 years old, and he died of his injuries after being chased by Israeli forces. He fell from a height of 5 floors at a construction site in the city. In terms of Syria, the Israeli Defense Forces reported that 22 Air Force fighter jets participated in an attack yesterday, Tuesday, on dozens of former Assad regime military targets in South Syria. And it was reported today that armed groups killed entire families during the outbreak of sectarian violence last week, with attacks targeting predominantly Alawite cities and villages. You'll recall that the former Assad, Bashar Assad, is Alawite. That news came from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. Witnesses testified that they saw summary executions taking place. In the broader Middle East, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that the U.S. would not be able to stop Iran if they wanted to produce nuclear weapons. They said, "We ourselves do not want to do so." At the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump said that no one is expelling any Palestinians, seemingly backing up from his former call that the Palestinians in Gaza be displaced when he was calling on Jordan and Egypt to take them. Major U.S. conservative think tank, the think tank of the Heritage Foundation, issued a new report proposing that the UN end its military aid to Israel by 2047. They said the U.S. should reorient its relationship to its closest Middle East ally. The proposal aims to transition from a relationship based on foreign military financing to one emphasizing a more strategic partnership. This includes measures for Israel to include or increase the purchase of U.S. defense materials, reflecting a more reciprocal and mature alliance between the two nations. For many, this Heritage Foundation report has been astounding that the Heritage Foundation would consider cutting off military aid, even though 2047 seems quite a long time away. A little piece of Jewish history, an ancient Jewish ritual bath, believed to be the oldest found in the Roman world, was uncovered by archaeologists in Italy this past week, and I wanted to share that news. His Holiness Pope Francis is in stable condition. X-rays have confirmed that he has had improvements over recent days, and so we celebrate that good news. He has physical and respiratory therapy that's continuing. He has followed spiritual exercises that have been taking place at the Vatican. And I wanted to invite those of you who might be near South Carolina. I'll be participating in an event on March 22nd at the University of South Carolina alongside His Eminence Archbishop Elpidophoros, who is the head of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of North America, and His Eminence Cardinal Christophe Pierre, who's the Apostolic Nuncio, the ambassador for the Vatican to the United States from the Holy See of Rome. So we'll be speaking together about God created us to live in harmony. So an ecumenical gathering at the University of South Carolina on March 22nd. The symposium's mission is to look at the lens of Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, and Protestant faith teachings to better understand how our loving God has protected his flock and the issues facing Christians today. I, of course, will be talking about Christianity in the Middle East. So that is an update of the last day. May God go before us in unity and peace as we pursue justice and an end to all violence in the Middle East and wherever violence may be. In the name of Christ, amen.